Alright guys, welcome back into another PGA DFS video. This week we got the Bermuda Championship, which is going to be a full tournament field event. It feels good to finally have a full tournament field event. This is one that we actually can attack a little bit, and I will mention the Masters player pool is out as well. So things are heating up for PGA DFS here after two kind of, they're fun events to watch, but two no-cut events, so you can't really attack them too much in PGA DFS, although, last week was, or 2 weeks ago was pretty successful. Last week was pretty much fine. Was on John Rahm, was on JT a ton. Ryan Palmer was kind of my favorite in that section last week where I said it was absolutely loaded. You had Sebastian Munoz down there. You had Brendan Todd. You had Lanto Griffin. There's just a bunch of players down in that player pool range where I'm like, you can't really differentiate between these guys at all. Now, I ended up on Ryan Palmer the most because I felt best about him, which honestly ended up being more lucky than, skill there. All those guys were all great plays, and there really wasn't anything separating them. Kind of just got lucky that Ryan Palmer ended up finishing the best out of them, which actually kind of made it a decent week for me overall. But, those no-cut events, they're kind of just hit or miss. Okay, I really don't like them. I actually had one lineup finish at 695, I think it was, rounding up from 694.6, and that didn't have Patrick Cantlay. So obviously, there's a lot of hit or miss with the no-cut events, and that's kind of why I typically don't like to play those ones. I know had Terrell had not had a horrible round 3, it could have been a really solid week for me. If he had just one even par there, it would have been a really great week, and heck, he could have won last week. But overall, not bad, but I'm really looking forward to kind of the next few months of PGA DFS. It's going to be pretty good. All right, so with the Bermuda Championship, this is an event where 9 to 5 typically does well at. Last year we did pretty well. A lot of the players finished like T18 last year. Is a weird thing, but with that, we kind of know that the stats that we were looking at last year are pretty accurate, okay? Last year was the first time that this event had been played, so we were kind of doing a little bit of a guessing game, was using some comp course data to go off of, but that ended up holding up to be true, and so we're going to go back to the well with that. We're going to be looking at total putting. You saw a bunch of great putters finish on the top of the leaderboard last year, and I think that's going to continue again this year. Total driving, ball striking at an event like this where the caliber of player isn't as good all around. I want to see those guys that are hitting the ball accurately. That tends to just help them make the cut, and then obviously if they're making the cut, that's going to help you out this week. And then just in terms of making the cut, I'm going to be looking at bogey avoidance. The cut line probably around -1, -2, -3 there. Kind of just depends on how easy they make the course. But last year, that's what we saw the cut line at, and I kind of expect that to be the same. When it's going to be kind of around even par-ish, I like to look at bogey avoidance a decent amount. But overall, I do like this course, and it's kind of going to be one that we can attack. Let's get into kind of the course history. And like I said, this is going to be comp course history again. So with that, we're going to be looking at last year's data. We're going to be looking at the Macoba. We're going to be looking at the Puerto Rico Open as well for our comp course history. Kind of similar courses for this. Obviously, Brendan Todd played well last year. He won 2 of those tournaments, so obviously he's going to be grading out really well there. Wilson Torres is one of those guys. Kelly Kraft surprisingly popping up there, and Pat Perez, who has been playing pretty decent golf as of recently as well. Then just looking at recent form, Justin Suh. So the guy that we've been on a decent amount kind of recently, I actually like him a decent amount this week. He actually rated out as the first in recent form. Varner been popping. Stuart Sink, obviously that win is kind of elevating him. Without that miscut, that's why Wilson Torres isn't in here. He has 3 out of 4 top 10 finishes, but 2 events ago he had a miscut. So I kind of knock people for if they don't have a good last 3 events. If they miss a cut in the last 3 events, they kind of get knocked a little bit, although he did rank 5 in this. And then Emiliano Guerrero just been making a ton of cuts, playing a bunch of good golf recently. But let's get into the picks for this week. All right, so getting to the player pool for this week. Brendan Todd, the defending champ, he also had a first at the Macoba. I am worried about him, okay? The problem with it is that his last 2 events that he played poorly at were 2 no-cut events. It's hard to gauge what a player was like mentally, going into those events, but really he hasn't been playing good golf this year. He ranks top 30 in total driving and bogey avoidance, not total driving, total putting and bogey avoidance. But other than that, everything else is like 100th or worse staff hit rank-wise. So he does worry me a decent amount. I don't think I can be on him this week, although obviously this is a course that sets up well for him. Will Zalatoris. If you guys want to be him, you can. I think he's going to be a great payout play. Obviously, had been in a great recent form besides that miscut at the Sanderson Farms. Maybe we can just write that off as a bad start. Corrales Championship is also going to be one of those events that we're looking at. He had an 8th place finish there. Top 30 in total driving, ball striking, and strokes gain differential. I like him a decent amount here. Will Zalatoris is going to be a payout play for me. Harold Varner, I do like a decent amount as well. The only problem with Harold Varner is he is so hit or miss that you really can't trust him. He really can't be anything more than a low exposure play for you, although he is a top 2 stat fit rank. So he's ranked 2nd this week stat wise. The only stat that he isn't good at, that he isn't top 40 in, is total putting, where he ranks 124th. Everything else is 41st or better. So really hit or miss, and I don't like paying up for someone that is that hit or miss. It's very tough to trust that in a build. Now, sure, that's fine for GPPs. Milano Grill, I think, will be a fine play. Had a 21st finish at the Corrales, had a 41st finish at the Mocoba last year. Been playing great golf recently, just making a ton of cuts. That's the thing that we can trust with Grillo, is that he's been making a ton of cuts. Not the best effort, only top 25 in that, so that does worry you. You don't want to chase someone that's not the best at fit. So for me, the best pay-up play this week is actually going to be Denny Mccarthy. So Denny McCarthy, 15th finish here last year, 41st at the Corrales, and then 48th at the Mocoba. Now, yes, not the best recent form necessarily, although he hasn't been playing bad golf. You guys probably remember this from the last few videos. I keep touching on Denny McCarthy. That Safeway Open wasn't a bad start. He still shot under par. So you can't really penalize him that much for that, because it still was good golf. It just wasn't enough to make the cut that week. He is grading out really well. His lowest stat is bogey avoidance at 99th. If he can just make that a little bit better, rank, top 50% this week, he could easily go off and get a top 10 finish. Every other stat that we're looking at is pretty much above average for the PGA Tour, and he actually grades out as a top 5 stat fit, top 5 in the mile this week. So I actually really do like Denny McCarthy's. Not a bad play. And then we got a couple more on the high end. It's kind of going to be a fair and balanced approach for me on the high end, where I don't want to go crazy on the top end, but like right here in this 9K range, I'll probably be having a ton of players. So Cameron Tringale would be one of those. T19, T37, miscut at that Safeway, but once again, shot under par. That wasn't a bad round. T29 at the Northern Trust as well. Cameron Tringale, course history, really doesn't have anything besides a 66th finish at the Mocoba. Strong stat fit, though. Top 5 according to my model this week. Pretty much same as Denny McCarthy, where everything is above average given the tour standard. Strokes gain differential, it is his lowest stat that I'm looking at this week, where he ranks 80th, but everything else is pretty solid. 44th in total driving, 28th in ball striking, 9th in bogey avoidance, and 70th in total putting. You'd expect Cameron Tringale to be a little bit better putter than that, as well as he typically is, so I think that'll come back around for him. And then a player that we were on a ton earlier on in the year, he hasn't played in a while, Christopher Ventura. He's coming off of that miscut at the Shriners, where he shot -5, so he didn't play poorly. Once again, going back to that theme where you shot 500 par and you didn't make the cut. Obviously, we remember that tournament turned out to be a scoring fest, so it just wasn't enough that week. I think we can go back to the well with him, although obviously I wish we would have seen him made cut. He'd probably be a lock then. 41st finish here last year, not bad. Grades out as a top 10 play according to my model this week, top 11 stat fit. He's top 10 in total driving and ball striking, 34th in greens and regulation, 31st in that strokes gain differential. Decent putter as well, 61st in that. Where he's struggling is that he's making a ton of bogeys. So he ranks 128th in bogey avoidance. So if he can get better at that as well, he could easily have one of those top 10 finishes that we've seen from him recently as well. So I don't mind Christopher Ventura as a pay-up play as well. And then I will mention Peter Malnotti, not a bad play at his price point. Henrik Norlander, decent punt play as well. I just don't feel comfortable talking those guys up. The one I will feel comfortable paying up for is going to be Justin Suh. So I talked about him at the Corrales Championship. I'm like, this guy I kind of like. He was supposed to be something. He was kind of the forgotten guy of his class because he struggled his first year out, but it seems like he's figured it out in his second year on tour. 14th place finish at the Corrales Championship, which once again is a comp course that we're going to be looking at, and just been playing great golf so far on tour. 3 starts so far on tour, and they've all been T21 or better, and they've been ascending finishes. That's what you want to look for in a play. You look at his stats: 21st in total driving, 3rd in ball striking, 3rd, and I'm going to be looking at 125 to 150 strokes gain data, because a lot of the shots that you end up on are going to be around that range this week. It is kind of more of a secondary stat for me, but he ranks top 10 in that, 9th in greens regulation, 15th in strokes gain differential. He's the best play on the board for me, given the price point. Now, sure, it's tough to trust him completely because we just haven't seen him a ton, although I just love the golf that he's been playing this year. For me, it's going to be tough to pass him up at this price point. Then moving lower, our boy Adam Shank at 8.1. Adam Shank, I just like as a play. Top 25 stat fit. Once again, this is more of a play where he doesn't have anything really going wrong with his golf game. Obviously been in great recent form. Just been making a ton of cuts in a row. You have to go back to a while to find a missed cut with Adam Shank. And sure, some of them haven't been the best finishes, but at least he's making the cut. For comp course history, he has a 56th, a missed cut, and a 14th finish. Not bad. I honestly thought he'd be a little bit higher price, so I kind of like this. It's kind of easier to fit him into your builds at that price point. And then we dip into the low tier here, right at Stuart Sink. So Stuart Sink is grading out as a great play. Did have a T64 finish at the Shriners. He had that 81 on round 4. Now, I hope that was just a one bad round and we can kind of just write that off, although that is worrisome. That does worry you quite a bit. He was kind of in contention heading into round 3, and he kind of just choked it away, really. But other than that, had the first place finish at the Safeway, 12th at the Sanderson Farms, which he fouled up his first place finish. So that was impressive to see. He's casually been playing some great golf. He is decent for recent form. He ranks 3rd in that, and then 6th as a stat fit this week. So Stuart Sink at this price point, I don't mind, although I kind of wish it was cheaper. I don't feel good trusting it, but his game does set up well for a course like this. Yeah, Wesley Bryan at this price point, I just don't really get, to be honest with you guys. He doesn't have enough stats and certain criteria to have all of them filled out, but what he does have, he ranks out as top 10. Take that with a grain of salt because we don't have all the data points for that, but still, Wesley Bryan at this price point, I do like a ton as well. After that, there's not much that I love. You could go with someone like Joseph Bremlet, who 3 straight made cuts in a row. That's really all we have to hang our hat on. Not a horrible stat fit. Decent comp course history as well. That's fine. 31st finisher last year, 41st and a 9th at the other comp course that we're looking at. I wouldn't say he's checking all the boxes, but he's pretty close to it. I don't mind it as a play. I think that this range is kind of just going to be a stay away for me, really. I kind of want to do a fair and balanced approach this week just because the lower you get, it does get pretty scarce pretty quickly. I will say Cameron Piercy, decent play. We've seen him kind of been hit or miss recently. He would be a guy that typically would set up really well for this course. 48th finish here last year, 8th at the Corrales Championship, which once again is going to be a comp course that we're looking at. Top 40 stat fit, not bad, not great. For the price point, though, I don't mind it that much. And then there's one more play right here in the low tier. Rob Oppenheim, not a bad play. Missed a cut at the Sanderson Farms, but pretty decent this year. T36, T33, T27. So when he is making the cuts, they have been top 30 finishes pretty much for comp course history. He had a 24th finisher last year and then a 33rd at the Mocoba, as you guys can see. Then a 9th at the Puerto Rico Open as well. Top 40 stat fit, nothing great. Nothing that I want to go crazy with, but I don't mind him as kind of a pump play, maybe a lineup filler for you this week. All right, and then dipping down into the value tier, I actually don't mind Beau Hazler this week, kind of casually popping. You look at that recent form, 4 straight made cuts in a row, not bad. Even dating back to last year, was making cuts before that as well. So he kind of found his golf game again. Comp course history-wise, he had a 24th finisher last year, 41st at the Corrales, 41st at the Mocoba, and 35th at the Puerto Rico Open. So 4 straight made cuts there, 4 straight made cuts on the tour. He grades out as a top 20 stat fit as well. Once again, doesn't have anything really great that we're hanging our hat on, although he has been putting the ball really well, top 20 in that. Total driving the ball, striking the ball decently. So for a value play, he grades out as one of the better ones on the slate, if not the best value play on the slate. Let's go a little bit lower here. David Hearn, somewhat popping, although I don't love it. I don't think you should go with that. It's a little bit more risky. Obviously, we're getting lower. Kelly Kraft, he's a guy that had the 14th place finish at the Corrales. That's kind of why he was pumping course history-wise, comp course history-wise, but 2 straight make cuts in a row. Maybe he's finding something with his golf game. You know, for a tournament like this, you're really starting to get risky down low, and that's just what's going to happen. DJ Trahan normally does play really well at courses like this, these kind of alternate events. These are kind of his specialty. It's kind of why he's been able to keep his tour card. 24th finish here last year, 52nd at the Corrales, 52nd at the Puerto Rico Open. So 3 straight make cuts for comp course history, 3 straight make cuts on tour. He also had that T14 finish at the Safeway Open, which was popping, you know. Typically speaking, this would be a good course for him stat fit wise, although it's just not there right now. He grades out as someone that should be right around the cut line, but given his knack for his ability to play at tournaments like this, I kind of give him somewhat of a bump there. And then that's really it for me. If you guys want to go lower and like kind of try to find a lower value play, you can. There's nothing really that great to hang your hat on. I will say Andrew Putnam, other than the U.S. Open, made 3 out of 4 straight cuts in a row. Decent putter. It's not a good play. There's a pretty bad value section this week, so I wouldn't go crazy with it. But if he can just putt like he has been, where he's been the best putter on tour, maybe he has a shot to make the cut. But we know that can come and go pretty quickly. But you know, we just don't have any great value plays this week, so it's gonna be more of a fair and balanced approach for me this week. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like and subscribe. I do appreciate it. We are starting to get into kind of the fun season of golf. Had the Masters coming up here, have a bunch of full tournament fields coming up. So if you want to, join 9 to 5 Nation. It is $10 a month. I will say, we've been on a heater pretty much for the last 3 months in golf. I mean, pretty much dating back since the restart of the season. Been pretty solid there. And in NFL as well, that's also $10 a month, so definitely check us out there as well. Hope you guys join. If you don't, just please give me a like and subscribe. I do appreciate that. And as always guys, let's keep cashing. All right, thanks.